Howdy folks, Troy with V-Twins to V8s, coming back on to do another how-to video for you guys out there. What I've got going on is I'm restoring a car and I need to repair the stainless steel trim moldings on the car because my particular car, you can't buy them. And most of the people out there will probably be in this situation unless, of course, you have, say, a really common car like a Mustang or a Camaro. A lot of the cars from 50s, 60s, 70s, even some of the cars in the 80s had stainless steel trim. It's not really that hard to repair, although there is some techniques that you need to use, and it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of finesse. So I'm going to show you what my molding looks like here before, and then what it looks like after, and how you get from one point to the other. So this here, I'll just bring it right over to the camera. I mean, this is the molding that I have now. So as you can see, it's all dull. It's got some bends in it, and it's got a bunch of overspray paint on it and stuff like that. The other side I had already completed. This one here, I got it all straight, and it's nice and shiny. It's all polished up. It fits the car like it's supposed to. So this one's all set along with my two side pieces. First thing I want to do is I want to take my piece and I want to kind of clean it up so that I'm ready to work with it. So I have all of this paint that's on here, and just a bunch of, like, there's some tape when I tape the moldings up together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this all up. To do that, I'm going to steel wool this, and I'm probably going to take a razor blade and scrape off this this little bit of paint overspray that's along the edge very carefully, and then we'll get ready to fit it to the car. Back, I've taken my steel wool, cleaned this all up. I took a little razor blade X-Acto knife, scraped some overspray that was hanging on the edge of this off. So now I've got my molding. It's reasonably clean to work with. I can see where I've got a bend back here, and as I look at the top of it, I can see where there's probably a few dings. And then the end here, where it comes around the corner of the windshield post, is got a little bit of a wrinkle in it. So I'll bring this over and I'll show you. So in here, where it lays on the cowl, it's got this bend in it here. And then I've got this other piece here, where it's just kind of got a little bit of a wiggle to it, a little bit of a dimple. And other than that, I mean, this particular one right here is pretty good. Although if you do look at it, it's very dull, and it does have some nicks and scratches and things like that. Okay, so I brought this over, I laid it up on the car. Everything looks really good. It fits on there pretty well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten out this lip where it lays against the cowl here. Now, the tools that I'll need to do this repair, I'm going to use a very small hammer that is used specifically for working on stainless and aluminum trim. I got a small anvil, and I've got a fine flat file. So I'm just going to put my molding on my anvil, and I'm going to tap this area out. And I'm going to do this little by little. Patience really is the key with this. You can't be in a real big hurry. You just got to kind of work at it a little bit at a time. Until you get it where you want it. Okay, so now I've hammered this out pretty good, and if you look down it the long way, I don't know if I can make the camera so you can look at this like the way I can, but yeah, I guess you can. So this is where my dent was, right in this area here, and if you look at it, I got it pretty straight, but I got a couple of dimples in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat file and I'm going to smooth that off, and I'm going to continue to pick at my low spots and file it and pick at my low spots and continue this process until I have it totally smooth. So I'm going to take my file, lay my molding up on here, get it to support it somehow. So I'm going to take my file, I'm going to file this area, and this is going to knock off my highs, my high areas, and show me my lows. So, as you look at what I have here, hopefully you can actually see this. You'll see where it's scuffed is the high spots where the file is hitting it. Where the file is not hitting it is low spots. So I'm going to take my little hammer and I'm going to tap on these to raise those up so they'll meet up with the area that I'm working. And then I'm going to hit it with my file again. Now, I'll bring it back over here. Now you'll notice my low areas are getting smaller. Now I can continue to chase this and make this completely flat, but because this isn't the outside, this is just where the trim clip grabs a hold of it, and it just has to be flat where it fits against the body. I don't really have to chase that anymore. So now I'm going to work on the outside of my molding. I've got this edge where it fits against the body, is all nice and straight. Now I'm going to take a really good look at this and see if I see any like little dings or dents or anything like that in my molding that I need to address. And I have like a little tiny high spot. It looks like somebody might have tried to pry this molding off of the windshield or something with a tool of some sort. So I'm going to take and knock that down a little bit. Now that I've knocked it down, I've marred up the surface just a little bit. So, you know, that'll be something we address when we polish it. Also, where this fits on the end at the windshield also has a little dip in it. If you look at it here, I don't know if you can see it, it's got kind of a dipped area right there. I'm going to do the same technique that we just used on the side of it and work that out. Now, I'm kind of caught up behind where it's folded over, so I've got to take my screwdriver here and see if I can get in behind and press this out. My table is made of wood, so it's forgiving, and I should be able to push some of this out, which in fact I think I am. Okay. It's not looking too bad. I'm going to have to continue with this process until I get it where I want it to be. Okay, now I've hammered my end here where I'm getting closer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file and I'm going to file this flat. And as I file it flat, it will give me a guide as to what areas are high and what areas are low, so I can tap down on my highs and I can pick from the backside to raise up my lows, so I end up with a nice smooth surface. Like I said, this is a very time-consuming process. So I'm just going to hit this roughly with the file so that I can show you what it is that what my surface is really kind of shaping up to be, and what the file is really showing me. Okay, so this is my end piece here, and if you look, you can see the shiny scuffed part is everything that is the file is hitting it. So some of those areas could be high, some of those are just, you know, at my level, and then the dimples are the low spots. So what I can do is the really high stuff, the stuff that, you know, you can actually see a circular area where it's really pointy, I can take my little hammer and I can tap that down a little bit, and then I can hit it with the file some more until I get it smoother. And then the low areas I'll pick out from the backside and continue to file. So I'm going to continue to do this. So I knock down one of my high areas, and now I file over it and blend that area into my adjacent material. And I just keep doing that so I can have a nice smooth surface, minimizing my highs and my lows. My file pretty much is going to show me where my highs are and where my lows are. So I will just continue to do this and keep picking at it, and as I get a little bit closer, I'll bring it over and I'll show you what I've got left. Okay, so now I've completed my picking and filing of this, the end part of this molding. I'll bring this over and I'll show you what it actually looks like now, and then we'll move on to the next step. So as you can see, here's my end piece here. It basically just looks like it's all filed down, but really my file is flat, and I worked this area over flat and kept picking it from the backside up and then tapping my high spots down and filing it smooth, and I continued to work this until I have this nice flat surface. So now that my surface is flat, now what I want to do is I want to remove my coarse scratches that I have in there from my file. So what I'm going to use is some 80 grit sandpaper. I know you're going to think 80 grit's going to be like a lot, but it's really not as bad as you think it is on this particular material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a block, and I'm going to continue to sand this, and I'm going to sand it flat and smooth, almost like if I was using it to do some body filler or something, body filler, putty, whatever you want to call it, the same kind of theory. And I'm just going to kind of really smooth all this together. At the same time, I'm going to look down at my surface, and I'm going to be looking for deep scratches that were created by my file. And I want to sand it enough so I get a nice smooth surface, but I also want to sand it so that I've removed any deep scratches from my file. And I'll just continue to do this. This will take a little bit of time, but this is the basis of the entire polishing and repair. From here on in, basically what we're going to do is we're going to be sanding and sanding and sanding on a continuously finer basis. and refining the scratches that we lay down with our sandpapers to a finer and finer degree until the point where basically all I got to do is polish the molding and it looks like the other one that I showed you. So I'm going to bring this over and I'm going to show you what it looks like now, and maybe I can show you the scratches that I'm really trying to chase out of here. I don't know if you'll be able to see them or not. Okay, so now this is what my piece looks like now, and I don't know if the lighting's going to be correct or not, but hopefully if I'm really close, you'll be able to see some of the striations that are in there that were caused by the file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to sand with this 80 grit until I don't see any of those deep scratches in it anymore. Once that's done, then I can move on. Now I've chased out all of my file marks with some 80 grit sandpaper on a sanding block. And I think I'm in pretty good shape. I'm going to show you what it looks like now. So this is what my piece looks like now. As you can see, it is scuffed, you know, with 80 grit, but it's all nice and smooth, and I don't know if you actually can look down it or not, but I got a nice arc to it. I don't have any dimples. I don't really have anything except for my 80 grit scratches. So now that I get that all set, I really looked over the rest of my molding really good, and I don't have any other dings or dents or waves or anything like that in it. But what I do have is a lot of surface scratches and nicks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 80 on the side because I don't need my 80 anymore, and I'm going to work from where I did my filing with the file and the 80 grit paper. I'm going to start with some 180 grit, and I'm going to go back over. I'm going to sand out all of my scratches that I put in with the 80 with 180 until I get down around the corner. Then I'm going to take my 180 and I'm going to chase out all my nicks and scratches all the way down. Now, as I'm sanding these other areas, if I see something that's kind of deep, excuse me, as I see something that's kind of deep, or if I see something that's kind of deep, I can take a little bit of 80, chase out that nick or scratch, come back over it with the 180, and want this whole thing all nice and smooth with 180. So I'm going to work on that now. And I've worked this over pretty thoroughly with some 180. Now I'm going to bring this over to the camera so you can take a look at it, and hopefully you'll be able to see that there isn't any really deep scratches because I sanded them all out with the 180. So here's my area where we filed it, and we sanded it with 80, blocked it all out with 80, and then now I've sanded it with 180, and if you look you can kind of see the difference between my other area that I haven't touched and what I've done here with the 180. Okay, so as I continue to sand my entire molding with this 180 grit paper, I continually look at it in the light on an angle to see if I notice that I have any deep scratches or any nicks or any ripples or dents that I need to address, because if I do, I can go back. Now if I got a deep scratch or a nick and I can't take it out with the 180, then I can just go back with the 80, and then after I do sand it out, then I'll go back over it with the 180. If I have a dent, we'll use the previous technique of picking and filing, and then follow that with the 80 followed by the 180. So now I've got my entire molding sanded with 180. I will show you what this looks like. So now this is my molding. It's not shiny. It looks more like a brushed piece of stainless steel than it does anything else. So I'm done with my 180. So the next grade I'm going to go to is some 320. I'm going to sand the entire area with 320, just like I did with my 180. Now, I will continue to go grade after grade like this. It does get easier. Every grade is a little bit less scratches you have to chase out. Right now, my 320, I'm going to chase out my 180 scratches, and so on and so forth. I've completed sanding my entire chrome piece here with 320 grit paper, And now I am going to move on to sanding it with 400 grit paper. I will bring this over and show you what it looks like now. And as we progress through each grit, it will still have that brushed look, but slowly but surely it will become less brushed and more shiny until we get all the way out to 2000 grit, and then we'll be ready to polish it on the machine. But looking pretty good. As you can see, it's all nice and uniform. What I'm always looking for is scratches left over from the previous grit. So now I'm going to go to 400 grit paper. So to recap, we did the file, we did 80, followed by 180, followed by 320, and now 400. You'll notice that I've got my sandpaper cut into small pieces because I have such a narrow piece of material that I'm working with. Instead of folding it like you usually would on a car, I cut it into small pieces, and then I can use small pieces on here as I sand. The other thing is, you'll notice that I don't wet sand, I dry sand. And the reason I dry sand is because I don't really see a benefit to the wet sanding as far as not clogging the paper, which is generally why we wet sand when we use it on paint. Is it allows the water allows the sandpaper to shed the sludge, and it keeps it open and allows you to use your sandpaper longer. The reason that I use my sandpaper dry is because A, I'm not getting that benefit, but the other reason I'm doing it is because now I can just quickly look at my surface and I can tell if I've sanded it enough. When it's wet, I gotta dry my surface to see if it's enough, and I can't squeegee it dry like I can when I'm doing a fender or a hood or something like that and get a quick look at it. I gotta actually dry it with a piece of paper towel, and this becomes costly, and it becomes time consuming, and there's water everywhere, and it just I tried it and I didn't see the benefit to it. So I do all my sanding here dry, and I'm going to show you what this looks like here. You'll start to see a little bit of difference between my 400 and my previous 320. It's starting to get a little bit, not really a shine to it, but you know, a little bit less brushed. So here I got this is what it looks like with the 320. This is what it's starting to look like with the 400. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the whole piece with 400. I'll show you what that looks like. We'll move on to the next grade. Okay, got my whole molding all sanded all down nicely with 400. And now I am going to move, and I'm going to sand the entire molding with 600 grit paper, just like I did, and we'll move on from there. Alright folks, so I got it sanded down with the 600. I will show you what that looks like. This is what the surface looks like after it's been sanded with 600, and I'll bring it in close so that you can really see the surface. I mean, it's almost starting to look like it's polished now. Kind of looks more like almost like a brushed surface that's been polished. So now I'm going to go to 1200. I'm going to follow the 1200 with 1500 and then 2000. Okay, so now I've got my molding sanded completely with the 1200, and what I did notice was I had a couple of small nicks that showed up after I got down to 1200. I mean, this is common. Once you get it down to this level, it almost looks like, you know, like when you started, you know, it's got that kind of sheen to it. Any nicks that you see when you get to this point, you could just go back. Generally, you can go back to, you know, that's just that small area, take a little 180, sand it right in that little area, touch that area up, and then follow back through. So 180, 320, you know, the same scenario that we already did until you get back to your 1200. I'll show you what this looks like now. This is what it looks like with 1200. I mean, it's starting to look like, wow, I could probably polish this, but I'm going to go ahead and polish and sand this down with some 1500. and then I'm going to follow it with some 2000. And when I get down to the 2000, it's going to almost look like it's done. That's when we'll begin the polishing. I went ahead and did the 1200, followed it up with some 1500, and then finished it off with some 2000. I'll show you what this looks like now. And if you see it now, I mean, it basically looks like you could just about polish it by hand and put it on the car. So, all right, so now I got my piece cleaned, repaired, and sanded all the way from 80 grit, or from filing and 80 grit and 180 grit, all the way up to 2000. And now we're ready to do some polishing. So I'm going to post a list of things that you'll need to do the repairs at the end of the video, and then that way there you'll know all the sandpapers, all the tools and everything that you'll need. And I'm going to do another video that's going to show you the equipment you need and how to polish this to get this thing to look virtually like chrome, or like it did when it was brand new. So I'm Troy Kane. I'm from vtwins2v8s.com. You can find me on Facebook at vtwins2v8s.com, on my website, obviously, vtwins2v8s.com, and you're seeing me on YouTube now. So I appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel and support me so I can continue to do this and help anybody that's, you know, got the passion for the cars like I do. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a message. I'll try and get back to you if you have questions on how to do this or something else. I have a lot of other videos that show you how to do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I appreciate it. Thank you, and have a great day.